My name is Bob Kafka. I'm co-coordinator of REV UP Texas. REV UP Texas stands for Register, Educate, Vote, Use Your Power. Today's town hall meeting is to answer your questions because the people's questions are paramount in terms of voting. So you'll see a short video for about 3 minutes, and then our moderator, Julie Espinosa from the Independent Living Center, Reach in Plano, will be our moderator. Thank you.
You too.
Hashtag why I rev up. Because as a person with a disability, it's my way of saying, this is what I want.
Video here.
This is my right.
Hashtag why I rev up, because I'm empowered with my vote.
Hashtag why I rev up, because people with disabilities deserve reliable transportation.
Hashtag why I rev up. I want to see more affordable, accessible, integrated housing for people with disabilities.
Hashtag why I rev up. I love to vote because the attendants need more wages and benefits.
Hashtag why I rev up, because my vote matters as a disabled mother.
Hashtag why I rev up. I rev up because the disability vote is power.
Like a dryer or something?
It might be my fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you could turn that down.
It's the waves.
Okay, we are about to go live on you, Julie, now.
Hello, I'm Julie Espinosa with the Center for Independent Living, Reach of Plano, and I'm excited today that we are here to plan everything we need to vote now. So we are the live town hall meeting for all your questions and some answers, and we are very fortunate that in the state of Texas, we have Molly Broadway and Jeff Miller. Both are with Disability Rights of Texas, and they are the gurus of any question you could possibly throw our way today. Molly has spent time working with the Help America Vote Act, as well as her time with Disability Rights of Texas. And Jeff Miller is the policy specialist with Disability Rights of Texas. And Jeff, can you tell us just quickly, how did Disability Rights of Texas get involved so heavily in voting?
Well, thanks, Julie. Like you said, we work a lot with the rules and regulations that came out of the Help America Vote Act, which was passed by Congress after the 2000 election. And the goal of the Help America Vote Act was to help states conduct elections in a way that everybody can have a part and be part of the process. Part of that law created a program called the Protection and Advocacy for Voting Access, or PAVA program. And at Disability Rights Texas, we are part of that program. And what it is Congress gave us the direction to help voters with disabilities be part of the election process. So we are charged with helping voters with disabilities be involved from registration through the act of voting and beyond to be able to cast an independent and a private ballot. And so we spend a lot of time working with counties and county officials and elected officials to figure out how to make the voting process in the state of Texas work better for everybody, but specifically for voters with disabilities, and ensuring that they have access to the supports that they need to really be a part of elections in the state.
Thank you. So just a couple housekeeping things. We know that we have people watching live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. This is being recorded, so it will be available afterwards. We have some questions that have already been submitted. but you can type in your questions and then we will get them live and answer them. If you have any questions afterwards or that we don't have time to get to, we can email you the answers to that. And always remember the voting hotline, 1-888-796-8683. So our first question goes to either Molly or Jeff, and it's, do I need an ID to vote by mail?
I'll take this one, Jeff. No, you don't need an ID to vote by mail. That's a good question. You do need to fill out an application. So it's called an application for ballot by mail. That is due, or it is due to be received by your county elections office on October 23rd. So keep that in mind. When filling out the application, you have to check one of the boxes as to how you are eligible to vote by mail. So you can check that you are 65 years of age or older, you have a disability, you are going to be out of the county during early voting and election day, or you are currently incarcerated and you're looking to vote. In this case, if disability is how you will qualify for ballot by mail, I encourage you to check that box. And also know that you don't need an ID to prove your Texas identity because you're filling out your address and everything, but also you do not need to provide proof of documentation of your disability either. Checking the box is proof enough.
Oh, thank you. The next question is, I'm assisting my spouse with mail-in ballot. Because of their disability, they're not able to sign the envelope/ballot. What can be done and how can I help?
Your turn, Jeff. You can do it if you want.
Fine. Well, if someone is assisting someone to fill out their mail-in ballot, that's perfectly okay. If they live in the same place or and they're related, they can help multiple people, but otherwise they can only assist one person for each election to fill out their mail-in ballot. And what they would do is if the individual can't sign their ballot, the person that assisted them, there's a place where they can sign as an assister and they put that they have signed for the individual that they're assisting. But it's part of the process and it shouldn't be a big deal. And Molly looks like she has something to add.
Yeah, I can. I always have something to add. I would just say if they're having also trouble signing the ballot, you can always hold their hand in assistance to signing it. And if the individual cannot sign their name, they can also just use a mark. So they can use like an X. And that is valid for their signature as well.
We have one more mail-in ballot type question. And remember to go ahead and type in your questions and we will answer them live. What type of disability documentation is required when applying for ballot by mail?
I'll take this one because I heard from this very smart lady that said, no, as Molly said earlier,
was it?
You don't have to send in documentation of a disability in order to be able to vote by mail by reason of a disability. So all you have to, now you're signing a statement, you're swearing to the fact that you have a disability that meets the definition of disability under Texas law, but you don't have to send any additional proof, and no one from the county should be asking you for actual doctor's note or other diagnosis or whatever of what your disability is.
That's good to know. Molly, did you want to add anything to that?
No, that's pretty much it. I'd say if you are applying for ballot by mail and you've checked the disability box and you are getting feedback that you need to prove your disability status, you can call our hotline that you gave the number to, Julie, 1-888-796-8683, and you can talk to either Jeff or I and let us know what's going on, and we'll try to help you fix that and remind the county that that's not their job. I'll also say that when you are applying, the it's not the county's job to verify your disability. Their only role is to make sure that you filled out the form correctly and then process the paperwork to make sure that you received your ballot by mail.
Okay, I'm going to move on to some on-site voting questions as people are making their way into early vote. I expect we'll probably have a lot of these come in today. What if I requested a mail-in ballot, but I decide to go and vote in person? Can people do that? Can they change their mind?
They can. If you have requested a mail-in ballot and you've received it, but you decided you want to vote in person, you want to vote in person for whatever reason, you can take your unmarked ballot that you received in the mail. So don't write on it. Don't do anything. You can take that ballot and go to your polling site and turn it into the polling site staff, and they will take the ballot and do with it as their procedures call for. But you give it to them, and then you're able to cast your ballot in person on the machines.
But you do need, just to go along with that, Molly, you do need to bring that ballot with you when you want to vote in person.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have it with you, they're going to ask you to vote a provisional ballot. And after you then turn in your mail-in ballot that you received in the mail to the county, then they'll count your ballot. So it's a whole lot simpler if you just take it with you the first time.
This next question, we have record numbers of people voting early. I mean, long lines. What if someone realizes they can't stand long enough in line? Can they ask to be moved to the front of the line? Or can they ask for assistance if they need it?
Yes, so forget what the official terminology is, Jeff may know, but there's something called priority voting. So basically, if you're voting in person and you find that you can't stand in line for an hour or 2 hours because it's just you have a physical status that won't allow you to do that, then you can ask the precinct judge of your polling site if you can move to the front of the line due to your disability. Now, the precinct judge has the right to say yes or no. So they can say, yes, you can. No, you can't. We're not doing that right now. And that's up to the judge. That's fine. So you can move to the front of the line, and that's great. If the precinct judge says no, know that you also have the right to have your spot saved in line, and then you can sit down to the side of the line. So you can sit down and have your saved spot, go to the front of the line, and then you can go and check in at the front table, and then go cast your ballot as needed. And I think the other question was in regards to assistance. Mm-hmm. You can receive, if you have a disability, you may receive assistance at the polls, and it can be anyone of your choosing, except for your union representative or your boss, or an agent of those two parties. So you can use anybody of your choosing except for them, or you can ask a poll worker to assist you. And the role of that assistant is to help prompt you as to what the ballot is saying. They can help mark the ballot for you. They can remind you about discussions you had and what your choice was to vote. The only thing that they cannot do is basically make your choices for you. So like, let's say Jeff was my assistant and he was helping me vote, and I wanted to vote for, I thought the new version of Ghost, and I wanted to put that on a ballot, but Jeff didn't agree with me. He couldn't say, no, not a good choice. I'm going to go ahead and put the original version of the Ghostbusters on this ballot. He can't do that. He has to help me reflect my choices on the ballot. So there is that. And also know that if you do have an assistant with you, they're going to have to sign an affidavit stating that they are helping you and they are not putting any undue influence, that they are reflecting your choices. And then they'll have to sign their name and probably maybe put their address on there. But that's about it.
So remember, type in your questions if you have any.
Julie, if I can, just one thing real quick. Molly did a good job of explaining about asking to go to the front of the line or whatever if you can't. Don't think that you. The other thing to remember is that if you do have a disability that makes it difficult for you to stand in line at the poll or get into the polling location, curbside voting is a possibility for people. And that's the process where someone doesn't even have to get out of their car. The election workers will bring the ballot out to the car, and after you've shown your ID and signed in, then they actually let you vote, and then we'll take the ballot back into the polling location, but you don't have to stand in line or go inside. So it's always just another option.
I'm throwing this question out myself. What if you go to your voting site and you look for that curbside voting and it's not there and you are relying on it and it's the last day of early voting? What do you do then? Do you go to another voting site that does have it, or
Well,
that hotline number?
Every voting location in the state is supposed to have curbside voting available. So if a location doesn't, please call Disability Rights Texas, call our hotline so that we know, so we can follow up and make sure if there's a problem there that it gets fixed. But if you get there and there isn't curbside voting at a particular location, if you have someone with you that can go in and ask, they should be able to take care of it. If not, call us and we'll call them and try to work it out.
Okay.
And I always encourage people, because I don't think it's necessarily required to have curbside voting marked at the exterior polling sites. It's certainly convenient and much better, but I encourage people to call their county elections office ahead of time, just for the purposes, CYA purposes of calling, so everybody knows what's going on. So call your county election official and tell them that you are planning to basically make an appointment. So you're planning on arriving at this particular polling site on this particular day and time, and you'll be in this kind of vehicle, and you want a curbside vote. And so they will relay that information to the polling place. And so in order for the poll workers to be better prepared to expect you. And if you call the county and they're saying that that's not an option, it is. So call the hotline again and we will, work it out for you.
I know that I did curbside voting this year. The lines were very, very long. And I just thought it was just safer with, coronavirus and everything, to take advantage of that. So
Absolutely.
When I called the number, the lady said that she had to ask me several questions for where I was because she was monitoring over 40 different sites of curbside voting. That's a lot of calls that are probably coming through. So you might call and get a busy signal or no answer. So is it wise for people not to wait to the last minute to vote just in case there are accessibility problems that, yes, they will get fixed, but they can't get fixed in time? If they don't get fixed in time, then does the person just not vote?
So I would say, yes, always don't wait till the last minute, especially this year. There's a lot going on. And if you're calling your county elections office, be patient because they are receiving a ton of phone calls and they're dealing with a lot of different questions and services. If you go, you've set your appointment and it's all hunky-dory and you go and you find that you aren't able to cast your ballot via curbside, so like the voting machine isn't working properly, let us know, but also know that you can't be turned away to vote. You can still cast a provisional ballot. And I would just say the sooner the better. That way, if there's any kind of technical difficulties, nobody's stressed out about it. It's not like, 7 o'clock on October 30th and there's no time to fix it. There's that. I also want to put in there that I think some people think that they can do curbside voting and it's kind of like moving to the front of the line. I want people to be aware that it's the same idea that you basically get a virtual spot in line, and when that spot comes up to the front, then the election workers will come out and bring you the ballot. So just a heads up, you may be waiting a while, but you'll be in the comfort of a car with hopefully some air conditioning and good music.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a couple of questions that have come in. Can felons vote?
Good question. Yes, if they are off paper. So
what does off paper mean, Molly?
I understand.
I'm so glad you asked, Jeffrey. We say off paper, and that is in reference to someone who has a felony conviction in the state of Texas, and they have basically done all their time. They've paid their debt to society, so they've served their sentence, they've paid their probation fees, they've done their parole, and they don't have any more commitments to that crime that they've committed. If you're kind of free and clear, you can then re-register to vote.
Okay.
But only if you're what we call off paper.
But in Texas, unlike some states, there's no process. I don't have to apply to get my right to vote back. Once I have certain in those things, then I can just register to vote. I don't have to go through an extra step to get the approval of the state to then register to vote. If that makes sense.
It does. So now, a lot of people with disabilities might find themselves in a group home or in a nursing home. How do they get out and vote?
Jeff, do you want to take this?
If someone is in a residential facility, like a nursing facility or an assisted living or those sorts of things, the facility should have made arrangements in order to assist people to either get a ballot by mail and vote that way, or to transport them to a polling location during early voting or on election day. The same with someone that's living in a group home. If someone's living in a group home, the provider has a responsibility to ensure that they're able to exercise their rights. And one of those rights is being able to vote. So they should the provider should work with the individual to determine the best way for them to vote, whether that's in early voting or election day or a ballot by mail. But once again, if somebody is in a situation where they've asked for assistance and aren't getting the kind of assistance they think that they need, they can always call our hotline and we will be happy to assist.
So if they are in a group home and they're not finding that encouragement to get set up to mail and vote or a ride to go and vote, would the 1-888-796-8683 number, the voting hotline number, be a good number for them to call?
Absolutely.
And they can help communicate with the group home owner. Okay. If someone has a guardian, can they vote?
What do you think, Molly? Can someone with a guardian vote?
Sure, why not? Yes, so basically, generally speaking, if you have a guardian, you can vote. That doesn't automatically disqualify you from voting. So let's say you've registered and you're ready to vote. So let's say Jeff is my guardian and I'm registered to vote and I'm ready to go vote in this election. And for whatever reason, Jeff has decided I can't. He doesn't like the decisions I'm going to make. He just doesn't trust my judgment capacity. And he says, you know what, Molly? No, I know I was going to take you to vote, but I changed my mind, so you're not going to vote this year. Jeff can't do that. The only person who can say that I do or do not have the right to vote when I'm under my guardianship is the judge who has signed those guardianship papers. And I would say it's safe to assume, unless it is otherwise stated in your guardianship papers, that you can vote. If you are someone who is not sure whether or not they can vote under their guardianship, you can review those papers and see, or you can call us at Disability Rights Texas and we'll try to figure that out for you. And if, let's say, you are under guardianship and your right to vote has been revoked, but you want to vote, you want to get it back, then we can try to look at that option as well for you, but that'll be a process. So just know that there's a lot of options. So let's say you weren't able to vote beforehand, but you've changed your mind, or you really want to vote now. There's a process to it, but we can work on helping you change that.
But you do bring up a good point, Molly. If someone's under guardianship, you can't just assume because they have a guardian, they don't have the right to vote. The only way to determine whether or not they retain that right to vote is to look at that guardianship order. And as Molly said, unless it specifically takes away someone's right to vote, then that's one of the rights they retain, even if they're under guardianship.
We have a question from a University of Texas student who says, I don't have a driver's license. Can I use my student ID?
I would say, does your student ID have a picture of you and have your address that proves where you're living? If it does not, then you cannot use it. Under the state, that's a good question though, and we get a lot of those. In the state of Texas, there's 7 approved forms of ID you can use to verify your identity when you go vote in person. That is your Texas state driver's license, and this is all valid forms of identification. It can't really be expired unless you're like age 65 or older.
Yes, but if you're old, they can be expired, like me.
If you're Jeff's age, you can vote for whatever. No, but you need a valid Texas state identification card, driver's license, election ID, concealed handgun license, U.S. Military identification card, U.S. passport, or I believe a U.S. citizenship
Correct.
certificate. Basically, it has a picture. It's a state form of ID that has your picture and your current address. If you don't have one of those forms of ID, say like you don't have your state ID, but you want to use your student ID, but it doesn't have your picture or your address, you can use an alternative form of identification. And that can be your voter registration card that you receive in the mail once you've registered. It could be a current utility bill, a government document that has your name and address on it, a pay stub, a current pay stub, a bank statement. I'm sure I'm missing something, but basically any kind of government document with your name and address on it. And if you provide that, you can still vote, but know that you'll have to fill out a reasonable impediment declaration form, which basically says, I am who I am, and this is why I don't have one of the 7 approved forms of identification. And you fill that out and you sign it, and then you go vote. And that's it.
But I do think it's important for people to remember that when you sign that reasonable impediment declaration, you are saying that I cannot get one of the acceptable forms of identification because of my circumstances. And you are actually swearing to that. So people should only fill those things out if it's true. If I have a driver's license, but it's I left it at home, and I get to the polling location and I want to vote, I can't just fill out the affidavit and say, I don't have it with me right now, but trust me. I'm saying that I don't have it and can't get one.
So you have to go back home and get it.
So, exactly.
Which brings us to another question. Someone wants to know, is there a fund to help people pay for transportation to get to the polls?
I don't know of one automatically. I know that across the state there are a lot of services like public transportation services that are offering free or reduced rides to the polls. Usually on election day, maybe during early voting. It just depends on the company. But then also I know that there are some rideshare programs that are offering large discounts or free rides to the polls. So it kind of just depends on the company. I don't think there's a concentrated directory of those resources, but I also always encourage individuals to contact a political party in town, see if they can offer you a ride to the poll, and know that they cannot offer you a ride based solely on who or what you're going to vote for. They have to give it to you for whatever, no matter how you vote. Contact the political parties in your area. Contact the Centers for Independent Living, see if they're organizing kind of rides to the polls. Ask a friend or family member. there's a lot of options. Check in with your public transportation if you live in a big urban area. Usually their bus system or their metro system is offering some sort of reduced or free ride to the polls. If you are living in a more remote area, the paratransit systems usually sometimes they will sometimes offer reduced fees for transporting someone to the polling site. So it's worth contacting your transit system in your area, and then also maybe get in touch with your League of Women Voters in that area as well, because they may know of a lot of resources as well.
I'm getting information that we're hearing a lot of feedback on Facebook Live. So if you are on Facebook, you might lower the volume. Be helpful. Another question, we have a lot of questions coming in here.
Good.
Is I'm a member of ADAPT and I have been arrested for civil disobedience. I am not a felon. Can I vote?
Yes, I guess. Yeah.
Yay.
And just to, actually, someone that's been arrested and isn't, not for a felony, but a person that's been arrested and is still incarcerated actually has the right to vote if they're otherwise eligible. So even if you're in jail, you have a right to vote and you can do a ballot by mail.
Okay. So now someone wants to know, I have diabetes and I have never considered myself a person with a disability. Can I check the box for the mail-in ballot?
Jeffrey?
Well, in Texas, the definition of having a disability in order to qualify to vote by mail is that I have a physical condition that would prohibit me from entering the polling location without needing assistance or putting my health at risk. And so if a person has a condition that by itself does that, puts them at a greater risk than of getting more sick or having complications if they go vote in person, or in today's climate with a pandemic going on that we still don't have a vaccine for, if I have an underlying health condition that would make me more susceptible to either contracting COVID-19, or if I do contract it, it becoming a greater problem because of my underlying physical condition, then I am eligible to vote by mail by reason of a disability in Texas. Mm. The Supreme Court has said that just being afraid of getting COVID by itself, the Supreme Court of Texas, is not a valid reason to vote by mail in Texas because of a disability. However, the Supreme Court has said that regarding that definition of disability in Texas to vote by mail, it's up to the voter to determine whether or not that they believe that their condition fits that definition, and that if they believe that it does, they have a right to request a ballot by mail, and it's not the role of the county to question that decision that the voter makes. And that's probably a really long explanation for a short answer, but.
And it's pretty new, you know. So I have another question. What is the best way to track election results?
In the news on election night, or if you are more, you can check your county elections website. I'll let you know that ballots aren't going to be counted and correct. Well, maybe Jeff, you can word this better than I can. But ballots can't be checked until the end of election day.
What? Most ballots will not be tabulated until the polls close on election day. That's true. Except in larger areas, they can start counting early vote when early voting is over. So those couple days in between. But the Secretary of State's website is the official repository for voting results in Texas. So you can always check the Secretary of State's website to get official results. But as Molly said, lots of counties will post regional numbers as they get them on the county website. So that's always a good place to check as well. And then, of course, the political parties, the state political parties will also be showing results. So that's another place to look if you're looking for if you're curious about certain kinds of results, you might want to check there.
So I just want to say again that voting hotline number is 1-888-796-8683. Remember, keep the questions coming. We have more to go through, but if you send them afterwards, we will email you back your answers, and we are recording this event. Justin says that quite a few people I know have anxieties about voting, especially this year. Do you have any advice or insight about overcoming these anxieties?
Well, one thing I would say is I think that everybody's a little apprehensive this year just because 2020 has been so 2020. With everything going on, things are different. And so people are a little apprehensive about things. I would say one of the things that we can do to help alleviate some of that anxiety is to plan, to actually put together a voting plan where I think through in advance, when am I going to vote? Where am I going to vote? How am I going to get there? Who's going to go with me? If I need assistance, who's going to assist me? What kind of assistance do I need? Do I have my ID? All of those things, and it sounds really basic. Yeah, we always think about those things. But if you actually write it down into and follow the plan, it's sometimes less scary, if you will, because I've already thought through this. And the other thing I would say is take someone with you to vote, even if you don't need support, physical support or assistance in that way. Just having somebody with you takes a little of the unknownness out of things, and you've got someone there that you can talk to and keep your mind off of wondering about the other 150 people in this line, and that sort of thing. I don't know, Molly, any other thing to?
I think you put it good. Also consider, I guess, if you need someone to help stand with you in line, just kind of, help keep it carefree and funny, then you can do that as well. But definitely make a plan that helps kind of make just things a little more realistic and kind of knowing what to expect. Also, if you have the ability and you're planning to vote in person, go by the polling site that you plan to vote at and see if you can talk with the poll workers, and they can kind of, show you kind of what to expect when you go vote. And then also, a lot of counties have information related to the voting machines on their websites. So if you're not familiar, if it's the first time you voted, or you haven't used, your county got a new voting machine and you're not familiar with it, you can go online and check it out and maybe get more familiar with what the machine is, what it looks like, how it works, what buttons you need to push, stuff like that.
I know that talking with people with disabilities, everybody has had anxiety about voting in the large crowds. And I think everyone came up with a plan for how to deal with that anxiety. One was do the mail-in ballot. The other one was vote early. So a lot of people decided to vote first. They wanted to be the first person to go and vote. So a lot of people chose that strategy.
Just go get it over with, in a good way. I think the more you put it off, it's just going to build up bigger in your head, probably. That's what it's like for me. The more I think about it, sometimes, the bigger I inflate the issue to be.
And there's also some questions about, are Spanish ballots available?
If you live in a county where, help me find the right wording, Jeff, but if it has been determined through the census that the Spanish language is essentially like this most popular language aside from English, then it should be available to you. So most counties will provide Spanish language ballots. If you are concerned about not an alternative language, but a non-English language that isn't predominantly used in your county, you can ask to also have a translator or an interpreter available to you when you go vote. Or you could bring someone of your choosing to do that for you as well.
There's a person who has a question here that says, I have a brain injury and my memory isn't good. Can I bring in what I want to vote for to the polls? In other words, can they have a written list that they bring in, helping them with what answers they want to give?
Absolutely. And getting a copy of the sample ballot that you're going to be voting and filling that out in advance so you've already thought through and made the decisions of who you're going to vote for is actually a really smart thing to do, especially because in some counties this year the ballots are fairly long. So by in advance filling out that sample ballot and then taking it with you to the polls, it makes it easier for you and should make things to go quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do it all the time, especially because this year where I live, they're having a lot of propositions on the ballot. And so I never know. It's hard for me to, if I read the language, I'm like, I don't know really what that means. So I spend some time studying up beforehand. And I make a little cheat sheet for myself, but you definitely have the right to do that. I would just say also, don't write the notes on your phone because you cannot have a recording device within the polling site. And I think for as on edge as everybody, I don't want to say as on edge, but as attentive as everybody is right now in the election process, even though you mean well and you've just written the notes on your phone, if you can avoid not using your phone, I would encourage you to do that. It's just less conflict all around.
Someone says they've heard that the League of Women Voters has good info. Would you recommend vote411.org?
Yes, absolutely. I actually use it all the time. It helps me figure out who I'm going to vote for. And the thing I like about it the best is that they take all the political jargon and they translate it into like normal person or non-politician talk. So I encourage everybody to do that because they put one out during every election cycle. And that organization, it's nonpartisan. So they're not going to wave to one political party or the other or one wing or the other. They're gonna just give you the honest facts and let you decide on your own. And the beauty of it is they'll also probably tell you where you can vote. They'll give you options about where your polling sites are.
A lot of great information.
Yeah.
Earlier about a cheat sheet. And when you go to Vote 411, you can go through the whole ballot and then they can email you your results. So you can print that and then you've got your cheat sheet with you.
It's ready to go.
Another person says, will there be an ASL interpreter at the polls?
Oh, that's it. Realistically, probably not. Some counties have they'll have ASL interpreters at the polling sites, but I wouldn't hold your breath on that. What I would encourage you to do, again, this kind of falls into the assistant role that you can access when you're voting. So you can, if you want to, you can bring someone to serve as an interpreter for you when you go to the polling site. If you do not have an interpreter available or someone you want to use, you can request that the county provide you one.
And would that be through that vote hotline number?
Yes, you could definitely call us and we can help you with that for sure. Or just call the county directly saying, and it's kind of like the curbside voting thing I told about when you're making an appointment. Let the county know that you need an interpreter, an ASL interpreter, and you're planning on showing up at this location at this date and time. You'll need your interpreter then. And if you may get some pushback. And so if that's the case, let us know because that is something that the county should provide for you if you request it. But I would suggest don't, just for the sake of time and efficiency, don't don't go into a polling site and expect to request one on site and one be provided to you. I just don't think that's realistic, as much as it should be, just to kind of make things more efficient for everybody.
And be aware that in lots of places, when you request ASL interpretation, instead of having a physical interpreter there with you, they're going to use a video relay interpreter. And so if there's a reason that that doesn't work for you, you have a right to request something different. But just know that in lots of cases, that's the first option for the county, is to use the video relay interpretation.
So this event is being recorded. It will be on revuptexas.org. And someone wants to know, will this information be available in Spanish anytime soon? So I know that revuptexas.org does have information in English and in Spanish. So I'm assuming that this will be translated in Spanish as well. But we'll get the definitive answer from that, and we can email that answer out. But and this is a question I don't really.
Can I add something real quick, Julie?
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Disability Rights Texas website, it is available. The website itself is available in Spanish, and then we have a lot of voting rights related documents that are available in multiple languages. And whatever you request, we can work on getting to you. So.
Okay, here's a question. It says, I go to TSD in Austin. Is that enough of a number to ask for ASL? And are there ballots in Braille? Okay, what is TSD?
Texas School for the Deaf, I'm assuming.
Okay. Do you know if there are ballots in Braille?
Not readily available. Again, unfortunately, I think it's one of those things that you need to request ahead of time, but to get something in Braille takes a little more time. Not everybody has a Braille translator that they can just call upon. Know that if you need Braille, absolutely, we can help you work on getting that. But if you vote in person, there is also an audio version that can be used on, especially if you're voting in Travis County. Every voting machine in Travis County has an audio outlet, so you can plug in some earphones and the ballot can be read to you. That way, if you can't see the ballot, or you're having just having a hard time seeing it, or you just do better when it's read to you, that is available to you, and that's everywhere in the state.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to go along with that, at every polling location in the state, there has to be at least one accessible voting machine, meaning that it has the audio function that Molly was talking about, but it should also allow you to adjust the font size. So if you just need larger font to see, or to adjust the contrast on the machine so you can see the ballot better, it should have those options as well.
Okay, in Texas, is it legal to bring your gun to the poll?
No, it's not. It's a good question, because it seems like it's legal everywhere else. But no, you cannot bring your gun, whether it's concealed or not, to the polling site. That's not allowed. Yeah. But I'm not, so I can't do that.
How can we plan for the vote when we can't find information on the candidate's agenda?
Well, I would say if you cannot find information on the candidates, I would encourage you to, if you have internet access, look up there, just Google the candidate's name and the website should come up, and you should find a lot of information that way. But I would ask trusted individuals in your life, your friends, your family, about, what their feedback is on these issues and these candidates, and maybe they can help guide you in the right direction about where to find appropriate information.
And the League of Women Voters voter guide will also.
And sometimes the candidates may not have that information made available. And so you can go to the League of Women Voters and find out that they did not make that information available to their potential voters.
Like my county, or the town I live in, they're having a mayoral race right now, and I looked on the League of Women Voters website, and the mayor information isn't on there, and that's because they just didn't. The candidates didn't answer the questions. I had to snoop around a lot to try to find the information. I eventually found it, but until then, what I was also doing, and it's kind of deductive reasoning, but I was looking around town, seeing people I knew, what kind of candidates they had, yard signs they had posted. So like if I kind of knew how they thought, and if we had similar perspectives, if they had a certain candidate website or a sign in their yard, then I would be like, oh, okay, maybe that's something I want to consider, and maybe talk to that individual about why they are choosing to vote for that person.
Well, we have just a few minutes left. Hurry up and type in your questions if you want a live answer. If not, the answer can be emailed to you. And came in. Can I vote all Democratic or all Republican at the same time? I have some coordination problems.
So there's no longer, there used to be in Texas, there used to be something called straight ticket voting. Where you could just like push one button and you could vote for all the candidates in the political party that you chose. That no longer exists, but the candidates now do have what party they're affiliated with. So like Donald Trump, next to his name is going to be Republican candidate. Joe Biden, next to his name is going to be the Democratic candidate, and then they're going to have the Green Party and the other parties related to that. So that's a good question, because I've been getting a lot of those actually, is how do I know who's who for what party? And so those political affiliations will be listed next to them. But you'll have to go in and mark their names one by one. You can't just push one button and be done with it anymore.
Mm-hmm. And that might be adding to the wait time as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I voted yesterday and my ballot was 36 questions, and so to have to go through there and check every single thing, that takes a lot of time. And
then also remember, it allows you to double check.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You cast your vote. I know that when I voted, I was like, oh, this is all good, and then it wanted me to double check. So I handed it back to the curbside voting guy. And he said, but you didn't cast your ballot. Thank goodness he said that. It was like, yeah. And I looked at it, looks good, double check, and I was done. So always remember to hit that cast button. I'm sure nobody else made that mistake but me.
No.
Well, and I'll also say, in relation to curbside voting, some people, I've been getting questions about if the ballot machine that's brought out to them, if it's one that gives them a paper ballot in return. So kind of like the electronic idea that you mark all your stuff electronically, and then sometimes it spits out a paper ballot, and that ballot is turned into a ballot box. People are concerned about, then my information's out there and anybody can see it. What's the secret? How do you still maintain the secrecy of it? And it's usually put in a
I was going to say there should be a sleeve
or some sort of sleeve to where the information's not there for everybody to see.
The Disability Rights Texas number, one more time, for voting. The voting hotline is 1-888-796-8683. Use it before you go if you have questions. If you have problems, use it again. And remember to join the REV UP Texas campaign. Vote early. Register. Educate yourself. Vote. Use your power. And we appreciate your time, Molly and Jeff. And you had all the answers we needed at the tip of your tongue. Like I said, these are Texas. We are really fortunate to have both of them. And we appreciate Disability Rights Texas taking the issue of voting and people with disabilities so seriously. We have time for probably one more question if we have anything else coming through.
There is one question.
can you bring a mail-in ballot to a polling place and drop it off?
Good question. No, you cannot. If it is, like we said earlier, if you've received your mail-in ballot and you decided you wanted to vote in person, but you have not filled out the ballot yet, you can drop it off at the polling site and go vote in person. But if you have filled out your mail-in ballot and you just want to turn it in somewhere, do a hand delivery, you cannot turn it into a polling site. It has to go to your county elections office or the drop box, the one drop box in your county, if that's an option.
Which will be at the county elections office.
And then know that you have to be the person that delivers it. It cannot be somebody else. So it has to be you, and you have to bring a form of ID to prove that you are who you are.
So if you filled it out and you find out you can't take it in there, do you just tear it up and then go ahead and stand in line and vote, or do you hurry up and find the right place to drop it off at?
If you filled it out but you want to vote in person now, I mean, you could turn in that filled out ballot at the polling location and vote in person. They're not going to count it. But if you've already filled it out, it probably makes more sense to go to the one drop box location in your county since you've already filled out the ballot. I mean, I don't think it matters if it's been filled out or not if you want to surrender it so you can vote in person, I guess is my point.
Good questions.
I think that is it for the questions. Thank both of you for answering all our questions. Remember, revuptexas.org for all your questions and to see the recording of this. And the voting hotline number is 888-796-8683. I think that's a wrap. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. We enjoyed it.
It was fun.
Good.